Hey there everybody, it's Mike DiLisio with another solo mode review. Today I'm going to be taking a look at the solo game for Rallyman GT from designer Jean-Christophe Bouvier and publisher Holy Grail Games. Rallyman GT is a game based on rally racing, as you might guess from the title, and in the solo game you are using dice to plan your move around the track. So I'll give you a brief overview of the game, then I'll come back here and give you my final thoughts, so let's race over to the table. Okay, so just for the purposes of demonstration, I've set up a few tiles here. This is not a complete track. This is not one of the predetermined tracks that are in the rule book. There are a number of tracks that are in the book for you that you can just follow the diagrams and they'll show you kind of how to set them up. But just for the purposes of demonstration, to give you a general idea of how the game plays, I've just set up a few tiles so that I can show you the system. And so what you're going to do is you're going to start on the pole position here, the inside of the track at the starting line, start/finish line. And what you're going to be doing is essentially you're going to be trying to make a complete lap in the quickest time possible. Now, you couldn't do it here because I haven't even set it up to make a complete lap, but I just want to show you the mechanism. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be using dice. You're going to be using dice to determine how you're going to be moving around the track. The dice that you have is going to be determined by the type of car. So I'm using what they consider to be kind of basically the basic car. I have 6 gear dice, 2 coast dice, and 3 brake dice that are at my disposal. And so what you're going to do is try to be as efficient as you can, have the best line, to use racing terms. And I will state that I am not completely savvy with racing terminology, and I'm especially ignorant when it comes to rally racing. But you're trying to create the best path around the track to get done as quickly as possible. Obviously, speed is the name of the game. And so what you're going to do is you're starting in gear 0. You're starting from a dead stop. And you're going to be progressing forward using these spaces to move along the track. Now, each of these gear dice can allow you to move 1 space. And you can go progressively 1 gear higher, or you can stay in the same gear if you wanted to. But what I would say is I'm going to do this. Okay, I'm going to go 1 here. I'm going to go 2 here. I'm going to go 3 here. I'm going to go, just for the sake of fun, I'm going to go 4 here because I'm still moving forward. And then I'm going to go 5 here. And I'm going to stop there. I'm going to try to stop in 5th gear. And the reason why is that on my following turn, to be able to get through this corner, I have to be in 2nd gear, or I'm going to be in potentially a world of hurt. It's going to make it challenging for me. But I only have 1 space between here and there. So on my next turn, what I'm going to have to be using are brake dice, and I'll show you how that works. Now, at this point, I've got a couple of options to me. I can roll these dice 1 at a time, because if ever 3 of these danger, and I don't think that's what they're called, but I'm going to call them danger symbols, come up, I am going to have a spin out, and I'm going to lose a significant amount of time. So my options are this: roll them 1 at a time, and if I ever get to 2 of those symbols, I can choose to stop right there so that I don't risk it. Or you can do what they call going flat out, which means that you pick up the dice and you roll them all at one time. So you can see why that's a significant risk to do that. So let's, just for the sake of demonstration, I'll do it the safe way, and I'll roll 1 at a time. So that one's fine. That one's fine. There's my first danger symbol. 4 is good, so I should be fine. 5. Now, at this point, I could even change how I wanted to do my track. So let's say I wanted to go there now. 2, 3, 4, 5. That's fine. It still gets me there at the end of my turn. I would mark down that I ended the end of turn 1 in 5th gear, because that's how you keep track of your score. Every gear is going to be corresponding to a particular amount of time at the end of your lap. So The other thing I could have done is gone all out or full out. And there I would have been safe too. The difference here is that if I had done that, I'm going to get these focus tokens, one for each die that I use. So I'd get 5 focus tokens. And these have a couple of different purposes, functions, I should say. At the end of the game, any focus token that you have is going to remove time off of your lap time. So that's good. The other thing that they do is they allow you to lock in results when you don't race full out. So for example, if this was my turn again and I wanted to go one at a time, let's say on my first 2 turns, I had rolled 2, well, let's say the second one was good, and the third one I rolled another danger symbol. Now, I could choose to end my turn right there, or I could lock in these dice using these tokens. On the first one, I would spend 1 focus token to lock that in. The next one would be 2. If I had another one, I'd have to spend 3, which I don't have. But now, I was able to kind of lock in that turn without taking the risk of rolling more dice. So you can see these focus tokens are good for you either in taking time off of your lap time or in locking in dice. There are a lot of different types of curves and terrain that will potentially change the way that you go into a track. So let me just quickly show you how a brake die would work. Let's say I was starting in 5th gear here on my next turn. Now I need to get down into 2nd gear by that turn. So let's say I go down into 4th. I have to skip one to get to 2nd gear. I have to skip 3rd gear. So I'd have to put a brake die there. Now, actually, I want to come up here because this dotted line means that if I'm coming from another lane, well, I'd have to come from another lane to get into 2nd gear. If I'm going from this inside lane, I actually have to be in 1st gear. So I would go up here. That actually should be 2. I'm sorry, these dice are confusing me. 4. This is going to be to 2. So I've got to find my 2 die here, which is here. I'd have to stay in 2nd gear, so I'd put a coast die there. And then I could come out of it in 3rd gear. Then 4th has already been used. So the best I could do there is coast again into 3rd if I wanted to do that to try to end my turn in 3rd gear. All right. So this could be a potential way I handle this from 5th gear to 4th, braking to get into 2nd gear, going this way because I don't want to have to get into 1st gear, coasting, then accelerating into 3rd and going again. And again, I could choose to go full out if I wanted to. And there I would have barely made it. I'd have been okay. So that gives you a general idea on how the solo game is played. Let's head on over and I'll give you my final thoughts. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a pretty good idea on how the solo game of Rallyman GT is played. As I mentioned in that overview, I didn't set up one of the predetermined tracks. I didn't even set up a full track. I was really just trying to show you the general turn structure for how a solo game goes, depending on the type of corners you put in and the type of track you set up. That's really going to have a lot to do with the experience you have and how difficult it might be and how much you have to manipulate those dice to get around the track as quickly as possible. So first thing I want to do is talk a little bit about some solo benchmarks, things I like to discuss when doing a solo review. And the first is win conditions. Is there a clear win-loss condition or is it a beat your high score type variant? And Rallyman GT is an interesting situation because there's no clear win-loss condition. It's strictly a time trial. It's get around that track as quickly as possible. And so while that's not an issue, especially in a game that's really what it's about going around the lap as quickly as you can and trying to utilize those dice to the best of your abilities and taking calculated risks and pushing your luck when you feel like that's the prudent thing to do. That's not a problem. The issue that I have is that it's difficult for me to determine, have I done a good job? Is this time particularly good? Now, just on my own, I don't know that I would have really any ability to know. I could compare against my own times, and if I wanted to do that same track multiple times, I could just see kind of what my best time is and my worst time is and use those maybe as some metrics. But to find out how I do, you almost have to go out into the community and BGG, or I believe there's actually on the Holy Grail website, I think that they've got a community set up for Rallyman GT where you can kind of compare scores, times with other players. But to me, it's a little bit less than ideal because I kind of like to know how well I did. You know, I can get a sense, oh, I felt like a good lap, that wasn't a good lap, but I really would rather have a little more of a good sense of how well I did. Setup and teardown. It's a little bit of a time element when you are trying to set up the track because you have to go through the different tiles and make sure that they're arranged, but it's really not too bad, especially if you're going to do multiple laps. Now, I do feel like if you're just doing one lap, maybe that time to set up versus time you're actually playing is not a great ratio because, you know, until you get comfortable with all of those tiles, it's probably going to take you somewhere in the range of 5 to 7 minutes to set up a track, maybe even a little longer if you're slow like I am. And then you're playing around that lap for maybe 30 to 40 minutes. So is that ratio good? I don't know. But if you're playing multiple laps, then it's fine. And that's how I would typically, I don't think there was ever a time that I played Rallyman GT solo and just did one lap. I would always do multiple laps, or I would change out tracks and try another lap. And so the setup and teardown is not awful. It's certainly reasonable for the amount of game you're getting. The rules were fine. I didn't really have any issues with the rules. What I found to be helpful is that whenever something was an exception, so they would give you the general rules for a particular mechanic, and then if there was an exception, they would give you a illustrated example, and that's always helpful. The solo rules were really not much of a challenge at all because essentially they're exactly the same as the regular rules. It's just that you basically disregard anything that refers to other cars on the track. You're simply doing a time trial and you are trying to get that best line around the track. So, overall solo experience, what do I think? Well, this is a little bit challenging for me because I almost have to review this game in two parts. I feel like I need to review it as a racing game and as a puzzle game. And I do think that it does one better than the other. So first of all, let me talk about the racing game element. This is a rally racing game, and I do have limited knowledge about rally racing. I want to put that up front. I'm certainly not somebody that would call themselves knowledgeable about rally racing. And so perhaps this is providing a good representation of what rally racing is all about. But when I think about racing games, I really want to have this feeling of speed. I want to have this feeling of competition, quite honestly. And although this is a time trial, and so that competition that element is removed, I miss that. And the feeling of speed is also something I miss because this, it turns out, is much more of a puzzle game, in my opinion, than it is a racing game. So, as a racing game, it falls a little bit flat for me. As a puzzle game, it's a little bit more of an interesting proposition because I really do like that dice system. I think it's a very clever way of manipulating yourself around a board or a track in this case because it really is essentially a roll and move, but it's in a very, very different sensibility than most roll and move games are. I like that puzzle. Every turn is a new puzzle. The big issue that I have with it is I feel like once you have figured out to some extent the best path for a particular track, I don't know that you're going to want to deviate from that because the track is going to be static. Once you have that track, you can kind of figure out what's my best path, what's my best line around this track, and then it simply comes down to a push your luck exercise. And I do like push your luck, but I feel like it's almost, and I don't like using this word, I don't use it lightly, it almost feels solvable because once you feel like you've got the best possible layout, the best possible line that you're going to take for that track, I don't really know why you would change that. I mean, maybe just to try something a little bit more daring, maybe you're going to try to really push your luck through a tight corner rather than go the more conservative route. Maybe you're going to try to go flat out on the whole race. These are little things you can do to spice things up. But if you're really just trying to get the best time, I feel like there's a way you can kind of figure that out and then try to get the dice to work to your advantage. And so that's a bit of an issue that I have with the game, is I feel like as a racing game, it falls a bit flat for me. As a puzzle game, there's some clever mechanisms, and I like the way the dice work, but I also don't know how often I'm going to want to come back to it, because really, once I feel like I've gotten a decent time, I don't know that I have a lot pulling me back to the game. So, all of that being said, I think the Rallyman GT certainly has an audience. I do think that if you're a fan of rally racing, and maybe if you have more knowledge and interest about rally racing, some of the concerns that I have won't be concerns for you, because again, potentially this could be a game that does a good job of reproducing that experience. I can't say because I don't follow rally racing. I just know that for me, it doesn't really fit the bill as a racing game, and as a puzzle game, I feel like it has limited appeal just because I feel like there's an optimal path to follow. So for those reasons, I feel like it's a fine game, but not one that I can particularly recommend as a solo game. I'm going to give Rallyman GT a 6 out of 10. And again, if you are a rally racing fan, it's certainly something that you might want to take a look at. If you're a puzzle game fan or a racing game fan, you might not have some of these same concerns, but it didn't quite make it for me. Thank you so much for your time as always, and have a great day.